Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are tackling the billion-dollar question that is sitting in tens of thousands of investment portfolios, NIO versus Rivian. But we're not doing the usual who has the better looking car comparison. We're going straight for the jugular. The market has been brutal, and for EV startups, brutal is an understatement. It's a capital incinerating furnace. The title of this video isn't clickbait, it's a thesis. NIO versus Rivian, 4 fatal flaws that will bankrupt one of them in 2026. We are in a high interest rate environment where growth at all costs is dead. Cash is king and profits are the only thing that matters for survival. Both of these companies are fighting for their lives, but they are fighting very different wars. And based on my analysis, one of them is facing a set of problems so fundamental, so deeply woven into its business model, that survival by 2026 is, in my view, highly improbable. We're going to break down the 4 fatal flaws: the cash burn abyss, the production and scaling nightmare, the identity crisis in a red ocean, and finally, the ticking time bomb that's set to explode right around 2026. Let's get straight into it. Flaw number 1, the cash burn abyss. It's no secret that making cars is hard. Making electric cars is a special kind of capital intensive hell. You have to design the car, build the prototype, source the batteries, build $1 billion gigafactory, and then figure out how to put them all together thousands of times a day without a single mistake. All of this happens before you've sold a single car. Both NIO and Rivian are hemorrhaging cash, but in critically different ways. Let's start with Rivian. Rivian entered the public markets with a war chest. Their 2021 IPO was one of the largest in history, stuffing their balance sheet with nearly $18 billion. At the time, it looked like infinite money. But as we've seen, infinite runs out fast when you're burning over $1 billion a quarter. Rivian's core problem is its gross margin. For a long time, they were losing tens of thousands of dollars on every single R1T and R1S they sold. While that's improving, they are still deeply in the red. Their entire business case now rests on the R2 platform, a smaller, cheaper, mass-market vehicle to be built at their new multi-billion-dollar Georgia plant. This is a bet the company move. They are spending their massive cash pile to fund 2 simultaneous operations, scaling the high-cost R1 platform in Illinois and building an entirely new, unproven platform and factory in Georgia. Their cash runway is a simple, terrifying math problem. If the R2 launch is delayed, if the factory build-out has overruns, or if demand isn't there when it launches, they hit a brick wall. They have a finite amount of cash and the clock is ticking. Their Amazon EDV electric delivery van order is a fantastic, stable line of business, but it's a lower margin fleet deal. It's not enough to fund the consumer side's ambitions. No, let's look at NIO. NIO's cash burn is more complex and, in my opinion, far more dangerous. NIO has already had a near-death experience back in 2019 when it was saved by a multi-billion-dollar bailout from the Hefei municipal government. Since then, NIO hasn't been funding itself through operations. It's been funding itself through constant capital raises. They are masters of dilution. They raise money through American depository shares. They get strategic investments from state-backed entities like the Abu Dhabi Fund, and they issue massive amounts of convertible notes. This is a critical distinction. Rivian is burning its own IPO cash. NIO is burning a constant stream of new money. But where is that money going? This is NIO's strategic trap. They aren't just a car company, they are an infrastructure and service company. Their flagship technology isn't just the car, it's the battery as a service, BASA's model, and their network of over 200 automated battery swap stations. This is, from a consumer standpoint, a brilliant idea. You pull in and a robot swaps your depleted battery for a full one in 3 minutes. It solves range anxiety, but from a financial standpoint, it's an anchor. NIO has to pre-purchase thousands of extra batteries to stock these stations. They have to pay for the real estate. They have to build and maintain the stations themselves. They are running a multi-billion-dollar real estate and energy network on top of a multi-billion-dollar car manufacturing business. So while Rivian is burning cash on R&D and factory scaling, NIO is burning cash on R&D, factory scaling, and a nationwide battery swapping infrastructure. This double burn means they are permanently dependent on the capital markets remaining open to them. When you compare the two, Rivian's problem is a finite runway. NIO's problem is a structural dependency. In a high interest rate world, the company that needs to keep borrowing just to stay alive is in the more precarious position. This brings us to flaw number 2, the production and scaling nightmare. This is the classic Tesla killer problem. It's one thing to build a few thousand beautiful vehicles by hand. It's another thing entirely to build 500 of them a year at a profit. This is what's known as production hell, and both companies are living it. Rivian's challenge is the traditional one. They have one factory in Normal, Illinois. They have struggled mightily with the supply chain and with the manufacturing complexity of the R1 platform. These are big, complex vehicles. They've had production shutdowns to retool the line, and they've battled component shortages. Their entire future. The R2 depends on building a second factory in Georgia from scratch. This is a monumental execution risk. They are trying to do in 2 or 3 years what it took Tesla a decade to figure out. They have to build the machine that builds the machine. If there are permitting delays, construction problems, or issues with the new assembly line, the R2 gets pushed back. And as we just discussed, a delay is fatal. They don't have the cash to survive a 2-year delay. The execution risk for Rivian is concentrated and massive. They have to get the R2 ramp right, on time, and on budget. It's a pass-fail test. NIO's production problem is different. It's a problem of margin and dependency. For most of its life, NIO didn't even build its own cars. It used a contract manufacturer, Jack Motors, a state-owned company. This was an asset-light model that got them to market fast, but it came at a cost. They had to pay Jack for every car, which ate into their already thin margins. They didn't have full control over the process, the quality, or the speed. They are now finally bringing their own manufacturing in-house at their new F1 and F2 factories. But this is late in the game. They are spending billions on this now. Just as a brutal price war is kicking off, they are adding massive capital expenditures to their balance sheet at the worst possible time. Furthermore, NIO's platform strategy is overly complex. They have the ES8, ES6, ES7, EC6, EC7, ET5, ET7. A huge lineup of vehicles all competing for slightly different slivers of the premium market. Every new model adds supply chain complexity, marketing costs, and manufacturing changeovers. Tesla, by contrast, survived by focusing only on the Model 3 and Model Y for years, perfecting that one platform. NIO's production nightmare isn't a single ramp up. It's a death by 1,000 cuts from a complex margin, destroying an historically dependent manufacturing model. So Rivian has a single, terrifying execution hurdle. NIO has a chronic, systemic manufacturing inefficiency and a high-cost structure it can't escape. This is a deep dive, and I know this is a lot of information. If you're an investor in either of these stocks or are thinking about it, this is the level of detail you need. If you're getting value from this analysis, please do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps the channel's visibility and lets me know that you want more of this deep, fundamental analysis. And if you haven't already, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. We are only halfway through, and the next 2 flaws are the ones that truly seal the deal. Outright, flaw number 3, the identity crisis in a red ocean. This might be the most important strategic flaw. Who are these companies for, and can they defend their turf? Rivian has one of the clearest and most brilliant brand identities in the auto industry. They are the Patagonia of trucks. They are not for the construction worker, they are for the high-income adventurer, the rock climber, the mountain biker, the overlander. They created the premium electric adventure vehicle niche. The R1T and R1S are category-defining products. The problem, that niche is tiny, And it's not their niche anymore. It's now under a full-scale assault from the Goliaths. Ford, the undisputed king of trucks, has the F-150 Lightning. General Motors has the Hummer EV. Tesla has the Cybertruck. And in the near future, Ram will have its 1500 Rev, and Volkswagen is specifically relaunching the Scout brand to be a direct, rugged, off-road competitor to Rivian. Rivian had a 1 to 2 year head start. And that's it. They are now in a knife fight with companies that have 100-year-old brands, coast-to-coast dealer and service networks, and manufacturing scale that Rivian can only dream of. Rivian's brand is cool, but is it beat Ford in a truck war cool? Unlikely. Their real identity might end up being their commercial van business for Amazon, but that's a B2B fleet business which is stable but low margin. It won't create the explosive growth investors were promised. The R2 is their attempt to break out of this niche into the mass market, but it will be launching into a sea of competitors, including the Model Y, the Mustang Mach-E, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, and dozens of others. Their adventure brand might get diluted into just another electric crossover. Now, NIO. NIO's identity is also clear, but it's strategically perilous. They are the premium service brand of China. They are not just selling a car, they are selling a lifestyle, a club. Their NIO houses are a perfect example. These aren't dealerships. They are luxurious, high-end lounges in the most expensive real estate in China, complete with cafes, libraries, and event spaces for NIO owners. This, combined with the battery as a service swap stations, creates incredible brand loyalty. Here is the fatal part. This model is unbelievably expensive, and it has been deployed in the single most competitive, brutal, and cutthroat EV market on the planet. China is not just a red ocean, it's a bloodbath. NIO is not just competing with Tesla, which is constantly slashing prices. It's competing with BYD, the world's largest EV maker, a company that is so vertically integrated it makes its own batteries and microchips. BYD can sell cars for a profit at prices that would bankrupt NIO instantly. And it's also competing with a dozen other well-funded startups like Li Auto and Xpeng, not to mention legacy giants like Geely and VW's Chinese operations. NIO is trapped. Their premium identity and high-cost service model prevent them from competing on price. But a deflationary price war is the only game in town in China right now. They are stuck at the high end fighting for a small piece of the premium market, while their cost beta stations, NIO houses, are fixed and massive. Their expansion into Europe is a desperate attempt to find new, higher margin customers. But it's a slow, expensive grind. They are finding that Europeans are not as excited about battery swap, and they are loyal to their own domestic brands like Mercedes, BMW and Audi, who are now rolling out their own compelling EVs. So we have two identity crises. Rivian has a strong brand in a small niche that is now being invaded by giants, forcing it into a mass market where its brand may not matter. NIO has a high-cost, service-based brand that is strategically incompatible with the deflationary price war happening in its home market. Both are trapped. This leads us to the final nail in the coffin. Flaw number 4, the ticking time bomb of 2026. I chose the year 2026 for a very specific reason. It's not a random date. It is the year that two lethal forces are set to converge, a wall of debt and the arrival of the real competition. Let's talk about the debt. Many of these EV startups, including NIO and Rivian, funded their growth during the zero interest rate policy ZIRP era. A popular way to do this was with convertible notes. These are a form of debt. A company borrows, say, $1 billion, due to be paid back in 5 or 6 years. The convertible part means that if the company's stock price goes above a certain target, the lender can convert the debt into stock and everyone is happy. But what if the stock price is below that target? What if it's down 90% from its high? The lender doesn't convert, they demand their money back. In cash, NIO is the king of this. They have billions of dollars in convertible notes issued in 2020 and 2021, with maturity dates clustering around 2025, 2026, and 2027. The conversion prices on these notes are in many cases wildly higher than where the stock is trading today. This means that in 2026, NIO will be on the hook for billions of dollars in debt repayments. Where will that cash come from? Not from operations, which are still burning cash. It will have to come from, you guessed it, raising new debt to pay off the old debt. This is called rolling over your debt. But they will be trying to borrow money in a high interest rate world with a collapsing stock price and a business model that is still unprofitable. The cost of that new debt will be astronomical, or they will have to get another bailout from a state-backed entity, further diluting shareholders and proving the business cannot stand on its own. This is a financial death spiral. Rivian has this problem too, with its own convertible notes due around the same time. But for Rivian, the 2026 bomb is even more explosive. Why? Because 2026 is the year the R2 is supposed to launch. Think about this timing. Rivian will be spending its last $1 billion of IPO cash to finish the Georgia factory and start the R2 production line at the exact same time its convertible notes come due. They will be facing a massive capital expenditure and a massive debt repayment simultaneously. This leaves them with zero margin for error, a 1-quarter delay in the R2, insolvent, a slower than expected production ramp. Insolvent, a recession hits and demand for new cars dries up, insolvent. They will be financially cornered, and as this debt bomb is exploding, the second catalyst hits, the second wave of competition. So far, these startups have been competing with Tesla and each other. That was the easy part. 2025 and 2026 is when the real legacy auto giants, after a decade of fumbling, finally launched their dedicated mass market, next generation EV platforms. I'm talking about Volkswagen's new SSP architecture. I'm talking about Toyota's next generation solid state battery vehicles. I'm talking about the new platforms from Stellantis, Hyundai and GM. These aren't the half-hearted compliance cars like the Chevy Bolt. These are $30,000 EVs built on dedicated platforms with next-gen batteries and manufactured at a scale and efficiency that startups can't touch. How does this kill them? For Rivian, its R2 will launch directly into the teeth of this. It will no longer be the cool new thing. It will be one of 20 new electric crossovers, many of which will be cheaper, have a better service network, and carry a brand name like Toyota or VW. And at the same time, its high-end R1 niche will be completely overrun by Ford's next-gen electric truck, Project T3 and VW Scout. For NIO, it's even worse. In China, the price war will intensify as these global platforms enter the market, adding even more pressure. And in Europe, its target expansion market, it will be trying to sell its high-cost battery swap cars against brand new, next-gen electric BMWs, Mercedes and Audis who are defending their home turf. So let's bring it all together. Who goes bankrupt? Both are in terrible trouble, but one has a path out, however narrow. Rivian's challenge is one of execution. It is an engineering and manufacturing problem. If by some miracle they can execute the R2 launch perfectly, on time and on budget, and if the market receives it well, they can survive. They could also be a prime acquisition target for someone like Amazon or even a legacy automaker who wants their brand and tech. Their problem is monumental, but it is solvable with perfect execution. NIO's challenge is not execution, it is strategic and financial. NIO's business model is, in my opinion, fundamentally broken. The battery as a service and NIO house model is a luxury in a world that is now demanding affordability. They are strategically trapped. They cannot win a price war and they cannot afford their own business model. Their survival is not in their own hands. It depends entirely on the willingness of external investors and state-backed funds to keep pouring billions of dollars into a burning building just to pay off the interest on the last round of debt. That is not a business, that is a life support system. When that convertible debt wall hits in 2025 and 2026, and the company is still unprofitable, still burning cash on battery swap stations, and still losing a price war to BYD and Tesla, I believe the capital markets will finally say no more. Rivian faces an engineering problem. NIO faces an economic one. You can sometimes solve engineering problems. You cannot solve a broken business model in a deflationary market when your debt comes due. That, for me, is the fatal combination. I believe NIO is the one that will not survive to see the end of 2026. But that's my analysis. This is a high-stakes game, and these are two companies that have captured the imagination of millions. Now, I want to hear from you. Which company do you think is holding the ticking time bomb? Am I wrong about NIO's model? Is Rivian's execution risk the more deadly flaw? Let me know your pick and why down in the comments below. I read all of them. Thanks for watching.